We now continue the discussion with extras from the New Orleans sets of Jurassic World as we celebrate its 10th anniversary. I wanted to bring up a lesser known detail about Main Street that I found really interesting. So, while the set was built on a massive, unused parking lot that belonged to the abandoned Six Flags New Orleans, the original intent was to have it built inside the actual theme park. They were going to use the existing structures as a base, then cover them up with additional set dressing and add some extensions. There was an article by set designer Randall D. Wilkins that mentions this, and even includes an image of the proposed layout that shows a very condensed version of Main Street. But they realized the state of the abandoned Six Flags was much worse than expected. It was decayed, overgrown with vegetation, and apparently infested with alligators. So the plan was ultimately shifted to using the parking lot instead, allowing them much more space and freedom to expand their set ideas, while also providing a safer experience for everyone, including the extras.
I was there from the first day of shooting to the last day, basically every single day on Main Street. So from the start, from when they released everybody onto Main Street that first day to the last day that they had that whole talk. And then afterward, I had gotten a call back because the initially I had applied for, like I was telling earlier, for a military type role because I kind of fit the bill with the look. They were looking for people who actually had military experience, but if you just looked like someone who was in the military, and that was cool too. After I had done my initial shoot, I went back down to New Orleans because a friend of mine was having his 25th birthday or something like that. I got a phone call while I was there saying like, hey, we need you for if you can come back for like a week. We're going to do night shoots, and I had already been for off of work for almost 2 weeks at that point. I couldn't do it, but they ended up those night shoots ended up being the Raptor release and the all those cool things, and so that was my answer for it. But
Yeah, that Raptor paddock set wasn't too far from where you guys were in New Orleans, so it's interesting that you could have been part of that. Then the night chase that begins from there, that continues through Hawaii location shoots. But at the end of it, when Claire is driving that veterinarian vehicle with the kids to, get away from the raptors, and Owen comes riding in on his motorcycle. Now that was filmed about 25 miles from where you guys were. And it was along Alligator Road and Armadillo Road, I believe, near the Tulane Research Laboratories. I looked at that location on Google Maps, and it's clear they didn't have to build much in terms of a set, given how naturally rural that road looks with those weathered buildings. It's definitely a clever use of an existing location.
yeah. hmm I don't know if you guys remember, but obviously we started with 600, but like every day they were cutting people, down. So I was there to the point where there was like 15 people doing like small shoots. So the casting director, I spoke to her a little bit, and she said, you came from New Jersey, like and you're doing a good job, so you can. We're happy to have you. So I was like, yeah, that's great. It's fantastic. At the beginning, like the Main Street days, like we were all paired together. So during the first flyover, when Gray opens the door to his window, and then they do that shot going over Main Street, I'm walking with the three guys there, and there's another shot where I'm arguing with two of those guys. And they did I mean, what was cool was they started the shot down low, like right in front of us, and then the camera rose up. It's the scene where Bryce calls Zara on the phone, and then they cut and they start seeing her walking, but the camera's coming up from the floor, and I'm arguing with the guys, and we had a backstory where since I was the dino nerd wearing the kids t-shirt basically, I'm just saying I wanted to see the T-Rex kingdom, now we can't see it and all that stuff. But it very angry on camera, and it came off very very angry.
That was the day we were all on the steps for like an hour or two, right in the sun, just baking.
Yeah.
That same did I've tried to remember since. Did they actually ever tell us when they started rolling on those shots, or did they just kind of film us like upset and annoyed? I know they told us when to look up for the Pteranodon, but I know there
Yeah.
were parts. where like they were just getting shots of people like baking. And I feel like they
Yeah,
put us there to get those reactions just by torturing us with the sun a
yeah.
little
I
bit.
I think they did do that.
Yeah. But hey, it
uh,
worked.
yeah, and because they had, they had camera guys going around all the time because they were taking stuff for the website, they were taking things for any of the behind the scenes things that they had. So I think, yeah, I think they used a lot of that stuff. But then once that scene changed to maybe 5 minutes later, and then the pteranodons are finally coming up, I'm like in a completely different area. I'm right on the top step with those two other guys, and I could see myself there. And then there's another part of that when everybody's running away, which I'm near that guy that comes up and sees the pteranodons for the first time.
Yeah. Was he
Um,
not sitting on like next to the T-Rex skull? Was
yeah,
that
yeah,
where that
yeah,
shot was?
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, next to the T-Rex goal. So I'm right there, and everybody's running, and it starts to run. My head's like right in the camera screen there, and then
I did 5 of those 6 days. That last day where you guys broke down the door was the one where I didn't get the call, but I was honestly kind of relieved. I just went and sat in like a cold theater that day and like watched the
Right.
movie and was just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
as much as I loved it, I mean, any extra days would have been amazing, but it was all I was beat up from that sun. So sounds like that last day was a fun day though.
yeah, no, I mean, it was awesome because because it was such a small amount of people. Colin was basically directing everybody who was in the front, like, this is what you got to do. In that scene, you can see me. I'm like, I was in the first row of people, so he's like, you got to push the door this way, and it was, from what I remember, almost like everybody was kind of screaming almost a little too much, and he wanted everybody to tone it down because we didn't know technically what was behind us, and obviously they threw a pteranodon in that shot, with CG, but he's like, you're running, don't go crazy. And I'm not sure if it was because everybody, because people were getting hurt in the Main Street running days.
If you go back and just watch the BTS stuff on the Blu-rays, you see people falling and running into each other, attack, and it's all an accident, but it was chaos. It really was.
Yeah,
So.
it really was chaos. And I was pretty athletic at the time, so I was jumping on things and jumping. I don't know if you guys remember those dividers that were on both sides of Main Street that had like the T-Rex skull and all that stuff. Yeah, I was running on that thing during those. I was just going crazy. I think I remember they set us up by the open steakhouse window, and then they had the kids, Nick and Ty Simpkins. Basically, the camera was rotating around them, so they were just sending all of us going from one end of Main Street over towards the. It's supposed to be the petting zoo, and so during that scene, as they're coming and panning around, my blur is running across the camera, and then obviously it wasn't one shot, so they did that, and then they had a store on the top, so they put me up there. So they had like tents up in the top, so I got to see them do the Zara pull from the top, and that was really
Hmm.
cool. That was really really awesome when they did
Yeah,
that. So,
that's where I was or I was on the second story of the steakhouse during that because I started off that morning down on the ground, and then in the afternoon they took me and my brother up, and we had to sit there and wait for a long time because it got cloudy, and then they were like, we have to wait for it to be a little bit sunnier. And so during that time, we there was a stuntman right there on the balcony next to us. I believe his name is Danny Hernandez. If you look him up on IMDb, got to talk to him. He talked about his time on like Hunger Games with Jennifer Lawrence, and he did like all these other stunt things. Got to talk to him for like over an hour, I think, and that was one of my favorite talks with like a celebrity on set, just because all of his experience and stuntman, it's just a fantastic field. Like I would never be able to do it, but gosh, they just make it look like so much fun that it like makes you feel like you could do it. And then I think it was the next day on Main Street we were running, and I don't know if you guys remember the extras who were cast as like park employees. They had those Jurassic World name tags that were like 3D printed but looked sharp. Well, they are, and I can say that they're sharp because me and a guy ran into each other, and he was tall. And so my chin went into his name tag, and it took like 3 layers of skin off of my
ooh,
chin. And I actually, when it happened, I literally thought I broke my jaw because that's how hard the impact was. And I ducked behind a Dippin' Dots cart until they called cut. And then I was just like holding my jaw because I was like, oh my God, is it broken? Is it broken? Is it broken? Um, but then they took me to like a little tent to get some first aid, and the stuntman Danny was in there as well as Marty Kleba. They were in there, and so Danny had remembered me from the day before. He was like, "Hey, so you wanted to be a stunt woman after all?" And I was like, "Oh my God, no!"
Careful what you wish
It's
for.
like it hurt really, really bad, and so I was worried that they wouldn't want me back on set the next days because my chin was like super scuffed up, but they were able to cover it up with makeup enough that it was okay. And then it was healed up and gone by the time they did the Mosasaurus scenes, which thank goodness for that. Cause running scenes is one thing, but I was like close up for the Mosasaurus scene. So I would have been sad if it would have just been like scab. That set was really incredible. My brother and I were so blown away and there were so many times when we would forget that we were on a movie set. And so it would be like times in between scenes or whatever, and we're waiting. And I would have the thought of, maybe I'll pop into the Starbucks and get a coffee real quick. And I'm like, wait, it's not a real Starbucks.
Yeah. Only a few of those buildings had AC.
None of the ones I was in had AC. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dave and Buster's had AC before they demolished it, because I used to go in there on off takes because the pinball machines that were in there worked. So it was just something to do. They had AC in there. So a lot of time, a lot of extras would spend some time in there on our breaks.
What pinball
Because,
machine was it, Rob? Do you remember?
oh, they were all like 1960s and 70s pinball machines, like
Okay.
ones that they were okay with destroying, I guess.
Okay.
But it was that was a lot of fun. But yeah, one of the things, like when you're talking about Main Street, is like, if you guys have ever been to City Walk, Main Street's basically City Walk.
Including Margaritaville.
Yeah, including Margaritaville. So like I was on the Margaritaville side of the set, like they had the Isla Nublar Margaritaville menus, which is the exact same menu that I went to eat at Margaritaville in New Orleans, with a couple of the guys after the end of the shoot to celebrate, and same menu,
Really,
same
it
everything.
was. They just changed the
Only
logos.
yeah, they just changed the logo.
Lazy.
But but I mean, having Jimmy on set, because he was there for like 2 days, I want to say.
I was about to say, I didn't realize with you talking about how much they shot with him, like it was a blink and you miss it in the
Yeah,
final edit.
there's a lot of promo stuff with Jimmy Buffett. And then I remember Frank Marshall used to do DJing on some of the times that we had off. I can't remember if Jimmy also DJ'd for a little bit, but I remember the scene that I did with him. It was, they get I don't know if it was the AD. He picked me and the two other guys that I was with. And then they were like, you sit here. Jimmy's going to bring out the margaritas to you. He's going to look up. You're all going to see it, and you're all going to start running. So we did 3 takes of that. And that was, I know you guys were talking about it earlier, where I was like, oh, this is the scene I'm going to be in the movie, because it was longer. It was the whole shot set up. He was, he was inside, coming out with the margaritas, placing them down on the table, and then all you see in the movie is literally just him going through, with the 2 margaritas.
Yeah.
But
So he was bringing you guys specifically the margaritas?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's funny.
Very cool.
See, because the way they cut it, it made it just look like he's running away with 2 drinks. Like, yeah.
Right. So those drinks that he had in his hand were on the table that we were sitting at. So they did 3 takes with us, and then they did 2 takes with stunt guys. And the stunt guys were doing the same exact thing, and I guess they were trying to get a more dynamic shot of everything that was happening. And on the second take, they had I guess a red liquid in one of the cups, and the stunt guy fell over the table and knocked the cup onto Jimmy Buffett's pants, and that was the last take that they did. It was funny because in the film, in that little shot that I'm in, I was like, oh, so they used the take that I was in instead of the stunt guy. So I was like,
they ruined his pants.
Because they ruined his pants. But Jimmy was, he, obviously, for being a super rich guy, he was super nice. And like, he had just gotten a fitness watch, and he's like, I have no idea how to use this thing. So, on a couple of those, on the resets because the table fell over, the chairs fall over. He's like, have you guys have used that? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, let me show you how to do it. So it's like, I set up the Jimmy Buffett's, armband thing. That's just really that's a fun little story. Was anybody scanned by ILM?
No, were you?
The Main Street days, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was, but were you as well?
Yeah, I was scanned by ILM as well. So my question is kind of going with AI and all the stuff that the strike was about is, we were scanned before all that stuff. We can be used in literally any production ever from here to
Or yeah.
eternity as filler. So that was one of the cooler things because I know I told my wife that, and she's like, now whenever we see Jurassic World, she's just looking to see if there's a CG me anywhere.
I always looked for myself in the Mosasaur arena. I was like, I assume they're duplicating so many people. Maybe I'd be here, but hearing from the people who actually film that, it sounds like they just moved your
Moved
seat
everybody around.
all over the place. So very
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know, have any of you guys taken the time to look at those like three shots in Fallen Kingdom to try to find yourself in the main street?
I've tried.
And I think I am in that shot because I'm fairly certain the angle that does show the T-Rex skull is filming as an alternate take of that wirework shot, and I'm fairly certain I can see myself kind of like get up and run away. So, and I didn't know that last time we spoke either, Derek. So I can say I was an extra potentially in both.
Well, that's great. Did you ever get to ride Jurassic World the ride or the Velocicoaster? And if you did, like, did it feel like you were back on set at all? Like, did it give you the vibes of being back on the movie?
The Velocicoaster is probably one of the more fun roller coasters I've ever been on, just on its own. But the theming is amazing. They do such a great job of the control room like footage and also just all the in like queue videos. And then obviously the props and things they show off.
The Velocicoaster is my favorite roller coaster of all time, no matter what, Jurassic Park or not. Yeah, the theming on the outside is like so ominous and like, very futuristic. And, when you get inside it, beyond the statue that's in the overhang there, because that's still kind of like super futuristic. But everything beyond that was very much, I felt like it was very much like the set was.
Even the lighting they do in some of those rooms, like with
Yeah.
the grading, like the movie where you're
Hmm.
walking, it's amazing.
Yeah, and then the animatronics and for the raptor heads that they have in there are awesome as well.
And I got to do the Jurassic World ride just recently this summer, and I'm actually in the Q video, like as in the lab scenes with Dr. Wu. It's not my face, but it's my profile. I'm like standing behind him, and they're doing like an interview talking about him with like promo pictures behind him, and I'm there. So I was in line. I actually just stood in line for like a half hour and watched the whole thing. I'm like, please, I know I was in the labs. Please show up, and I did just for a split second, but daily. I'm playing in Universal Studios now.
Yeah, like every like 30 minutes, someone's looking at
Yeah.
you.
When they opened up Jurassic World the ride, I took a trip out to California. I had like 2 hours to go to Universal Studios, so I just rode Jurassic World the ride like three times, and then that was it. But
Was
the
the Indominus moving at the time you were there?
yeah,
I know they did that in stages, right? Okay.
yeah, the Indominus was fully working, Blue was fully working, um, all that stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do like that ride quite a bit, and I've been on it several times, but I know none of us have been fortunate enough to go on the Jurassic World ride in Beijing. Now that looks amazing. Like just from watching videos, it is definitely the best ride Jurassic has ever received, in my opinion, with its fluid animatronics and the sheer amount of them, mixing pretty well with the screens whenever they are used. But they do some really cool tricks near the end with the T-Rex versus the Indominus fight as well. And that's why hopefully one of these days I'll be able to ride that one, or, heck, they can just bring it over here too.
This was something I found again recently. It's amazing how much you still find this 10 years out. But I was, I, I like to collect things, like Rob, it looks like as well, more on the toy side of the spectrum. But um, I do thrifting a lot, and I found this very cool Jurassic World book very recently, within a few months. It's a look and find. So I don't know if you remember those type of books when you were younger. But when I opened it, there was immediately this page with the Mosasaur feeding show. So I was looking for
Ah,
Bo, and I didn't
Where's
find.
me?
Oh, and you may be in there actually. Now that I know
Am
you,
I
so
next to Ty and
yeah, I don't think they're in there. So you might have to look around. But and I was like, this is cool. I flipped the page. There's the lab, and I saw Derek Connolly, who was in there with us. He's on this page. He's the writer of the movie. And then the page over, I'm on it.
Look at
So
you.
I got illustrated and put in a Jurassic World book. And a lot of these people in this image are actually from the lab. And I'm friends with them on various social media accounts. So I would someday love to like send this around and try to get it like signed by like all the
oh,
different
that'd be
people
awesome.
that
Yeah.
that is
were
so
Yeah,
in
that'd be
there.
fun.
cool.
Um, but yeah, and I just found that within the last year, and who expects it, right? And I almost dropped the book. I was like, oh my God, it's me.
Now, as we end our New Orleans discussion, I want to take a moment and bring in two extras who were part of the previous video series for some final words. So, Bo Monarch, you were in the Mosasaurus arena along with Anthony and Maria. Is it fun to know that you were all part of the same scene?
It's like this weird shared connection, a bunch of hope, like across the country with a bunch of people.
So, yeah, it's crazy that you guys are just happen to be maybe like 20 feet away from each other. You were also in the Innovation Center with Chris and Maria, even though none of you are really seen in the film, but you all do share an image that was prominently used for promotional purposes and can be seen in this area during some behind the scenes footage I recently discovered. So, how was it to see yourself in that footage after all this time?
It was crazy. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how I didn't notice myself in that behind the scenes stuff because I know I've watched it. So it was just such a surprise. And I just sort of walked towards camera and I'm clearly not paying attention at all to whoever's doing the behind the scenes stuff. Like you didn't know where to place yourself for camera or anything, it was just sort of you just do and go and you show up, you show up. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah, like you and Chris are just like walking like kind of toward the camera actually, unbeknownst to you guys probably. But just for a moment.
I'm standing in that photo, but at some point during that sequence, I ended up sitting because I realized I wasn't in shot, but it was like sitting just to the right of Chris Pratt, I think, standing there talking. I don't know if Chris talked at all about our outside of work experience. He was kind enough to take me around and got me gator dogs and took me to a comic shop and stuff after the one night because he was just going to drive me back to the hotel. But then was like, hey, would you like to do this? And I was like, sure, why not? Just that kind of openness and big heartedness in people is always nice to see and refreshing. It's such a long and winding, like to even be sitting here talking about it 10 years later. 10 years didn't seem like just like a feasible thought back then. And now, like back then, we're up there even a couple of years ago. I don't know, I was running behind the gates. I've pretty much passed that off. Wife and I recently got a house and we're running a business and never intended to step away from anything. But life just comes at you. I am so glad that I had the ability and time and fortune to be around then and got to do that.
Now, Anthony Feliciano, you were in the Mosasaurus arena with Bo and Maria, but you were also in the Hammond Creation Lab with Brent. Was it fun knowing you shared these scenes with them?
Yeah, it's kind of incredible that 10 years from filming that movie, we're like finding these little connections with other people within the Jurassic community. Where at the time, I didn't necessarily know anyone who was there. I've never been to New Orleans before. It was my first time just anywhere on my own. I was just 20 years old at the time. And now, 10 years later, finding all these other people who are also Jurassic fans or had these special moments like Maria, it's kind of really surreal. A legitimate dream come true.
Do you wish you could have explored more of the sets that were there, like the Hammond Creation Lab and the old visitor center?
Yes. Oh my God, that would have been such a dream to walk through. I was also really disappointed I didn't get to be on the Main Street set because that looked like from all the behind the scene videos, like that looked incredible that they physically built all of that. And in a lot of movies of that time, and even today to an extent, a lot of it's just on a blue screen or a green screen. and using your imagination to a large extent. But like when you're on location or if you have a set that you can physically interact with, there's an energy that radiates. In a sense, like pretend like you actually are at some sort of resort because you have all this environment that you can feed off of. So I do wish I was able to see more of it, but I am very thankful I got to see what I did see. I guess like the thing that's been taking up the most of my time, which we just announced recently, is we're doing like a kind of sequel to The Hatchling, but like kind of more horror this time. We got raptors this time, a lot of blood, a lot of screaming. So I think it should be hopefully pretty exciting.
That's what we like to hear. A lot of blood, a lot of screaming.
Yeah. People have been screaming about raptors and needing to be scary. And the first one was directed by Tim Chinfano, and now I'm taking on the mantle of directing this one.
It's now the 10th anniversary of Jurassic World.
It makes me want to cry because I can't believe it's been 10 years. It feels like no time has passed, but also when I look back, I'm like, oh, I guess it really has been a long time. But I'm really happy that the movie was such a success and that it reinvigorated the franchise. And so much so that we're still making sequels today. I'm just so happy that a franchise that was so important to me growing up now has a new audience because of Jurassic World, and a whole new generation gets to experience dinosaurs and have their imaginations captivated by it. And I think because dinosaurs have a basis in reality, we'll always be fascinated by them.
Well, before we wrap this up, Brent has an interesting story involving a proposal. Here to tell us that story, Brent?
Yeah, so I in 2020 got to go to Hawaii for a vacation. We were going to Kualoa Ranch, and you guys probably know, being the fans that we all are, that's where they filmed a lot of Jurassic over the years. So I reached out immediately and I was like, I'm coming here, and I had pre-planned the proposal, obviously, and let them know like I was an extra in the movie. Like, I went there and got to see a lot of the props and sets that are from Jurassic World that we weren't on. So I got to see the safari vehicle and the gyrosphere sign and the gyrosphere station. This was COVID time, so there were a lot of different protocols we were dealing with. We had to be in masks, and even asking them to use my phone at that time was kind of like a big issue because I wanted them to film it, and that's what I was trying to coordinate. And they were gracious enough to do it because they understood, like, what I was trying to do and also how much of a fan I was. So we did get to see the log from the first Jurassic Park. So when they kind of brought us there, I had my girlfriend stand in front of it, and I was like, stand there. They're gonna film me coming kind of underneath it, and then we're gonna take some pictures together. And like when I crawled out from under the log, like Alan and the kids, I had, the ring. Oh man, what'd I find down here?
What the?
Will you marry me?
Jeez.
I gotta get up. Surprise.
Oh, good. Yes.
Oh.
What is that? Oh.
She said yes, luckily.
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing experience. Got to do that right under the log from Jurassic Park, and with the Mount Sibo in the background, because they use that kind of same valley for Fallen Kingdom. And then we also got to see the bunker and the Indominus Rex paddock, and just everything that was there. It was amazing. So yeah, great time. Jurassic follows me everywhere.
While our discussion with the New Orleans extras has now concluded, the next segment takes us to Hawaii, where a whole new group of extras tell their stories about the location's incredible sets.